Hi, Amascut here, and today we're continuing our talk about 2017's updates. If you missed the 10 best updates of 2017 video, please check out the link in the description. There's lots of discussion to be had there, and I will be referencing that list a couple times in this video, so if you want to dodge spoilers, check it out quickly. Anyway, as mentioned last time, it's been a bit of a rough year to say the least. While we went through some really great updates this year, it's been a very troubled one. With a lot of shifting gears and weak or half-baked releases, plus some misguided direction and poorly designed content. This list is going to be covering the 10 worst and most disappointing updates that dropped this year in mine, Avernic, Captain Lime, and Crondis' opinions, and I'll be going a little in-depth as to why we think they're the worst. Additionally, quick reminder about our rebranding that just went down. We have changed our name from just Amascut to the Society of Owls. This is a reference to the RuneScape novels, chosen specifically because Reldo, our spirit animal of sorts, is the archivist for this secretive group. We've got a brand new channel intro up on the channel now, so please do take the time to check that out if you're interested in more about what our new name really means. Hopefully you guys like it. And without further ado, the Society of Owls presents our 10 worst updates of 2017. At number 10, I've got an update that was actually vastly improved by year's end, but was just so bad that we couldn't help but mention it. That update is Achievements Batch 1. Like I said in the last video, Achievements Batch 2 blew this up and fixed the majority of our problems. But the fact that achievements were reworked so hastily and left that way for months was absolutely devastating, and really made it kind of hard to explore the new achievements released with benefice when it launched. I'm so happy this was redone, but the fact that it launched like this at all is almost inexcusable. Coming in at number 9 is the Genome Project, the 2017 Christmas event. We covered this one really recently in a Thoughts On episode, but after such a solid year of holiday events, this one was a massive letdown to us. Super iffy and questionable lore, non-existent gameplay, and some really awkward storytelling combined to make this event feel like a huge downer at the end of the year. It was a shame too, because we all had higher expectations, especially after hearing that they were considering keeping this one in game permanently. Not to sound like a dick, but I'm kinda glad they didn't. This one had problems, and if you would like to have me go like 20 minutes more in depth, you can check out our Thoughts On episode as we critique it in a little more detail. Number 8 is one of the many disappointing quests themselves of 2017. And this one is the best of those, but still a pretty big disappointment to us. This one is Evil Dave's Big Day Out. Primarily a silly quest, this one just had trouble keeping up with jokes, and ended up feeling more like a series of instances rather than a consistent quest. While occasionally entertaining, thus the lower number here, after a year of disappointing or just no quests, the big finale for the year quest-wise was just a short joke with questionable canon, and that really let us down. I do think we would have felt warmer towards this quest were it released in a stronger questing year, but this one came out after a series of really weak quests, and as such, it ended up landing a spot on this list. Number 7 is another disappointing quest for essentially the same reason as Evil Dave. Back to the Freezer. This one's a bit higher on the list though because of how hideously nonsensical it is. While Evil Dave at least made some effort to fit into the canon, Back to the Freezer was incredibly problematic by discarding any semblance of canon whenever it felt like it. A lemon soul altar? Sure. Time travel with no regard for how impossible that's supposed to be? You got it. A splintered timeline without any real semblance of chronology? Right here. While this quest offered some silly penguin backstory that did feel like it fit in, it honestly felt more like a waste of time than a necessary quest. It's sad, as I've been seriously hoping to see more penguin stories after that lovely Pinch That Stole Christmas event, but this really narrowed my interest in more penguin stories, especially with this being such an awkward side story that didn't even continue the series in a meaningful way. Plus the giant gnome in the desert is creepy. Like, come on. Number 6 is a bit of a weird one, especially if you've watched our best of list. It's on this list more for being wildly unnecessary, and the fact that it's done almost nothing to justify its own existence, especially for being such a major part of this year. That update is 120 Slayer. It started a troubled existence by being announced not as its own standalone update, but as an add-on to benefice. Normally, that would sound fine with a game's expansion, but RuneScape really proved that it doesn't do bundling well. I was personally really concerned by this before it launched, thinking both updates would really be let down by sticking them together, wasting budget that could go into benefice or 120 Slayer by just kinda gluing them together instead. And look where we are. 120 Slayer launched with essentially no support. We had 3 monsters for the 99 to 120 level. The Hydrix Dragon, the new Corrupted Creatures, and the new Soul Devourers. We didn't get a new Slayer Master, we got 2 new small rewards, including a Slayer Helmet upgrade that was essentially useless, and a few new creatures. That wasn't what I was expecting when I heard 120 Slayer. That's not what I expect when I hear a skill expansion. Just like Invention, the skill now had 21 levels of nearly unfilled content, and nothing of it justified it existing. And while we've received the Lost Grow creatures and the Magister to further expand the top end of the skill, it still just feels empty. This wasn't a level cap expansion in the traditional sense, but just the addition of tens of millions of XP to the end of a skill with almost no content there. And while the monsters themselves have been at least good, the change itself to 120 was, in our opinion, pretty damn terrible, and has yet to really prove why this was needed, unlike Invention that finally got some use from the 99 to 120 level. So far, none of these mobs have really given me any indication that they needed to be above level 120, with no drops that really feel special or fill a higher tier gap than a monster at, levels 1 to 99 could have been in. It's a shame. I really hoped we'd get something better, and we didn't. Speaking of 120 Slayer weighing something else down, benefice comes in at number 5. Yes, it was on the best list as well, and the same asterisk is being applied here. benefice at number 5 comes from the hideously disappointing rewards, 3 downright awful quests, the horrid reputation system, city quests, and, while more of a mixed bag, shifting tombs being kinda boring. While there was plenty to praise with benefice, as seen in the other video, the rest of the city felt pretty half-baked, uninteresting, and rather rushed to completion. The quests are really one of the most offensive here, though. Hearing that we weren't getting 1, not 2 either, not even 3, but 4 whole quests coming from Mod Rowley and his team had me beyond psyched. Rowley's track record is pristine, and he's had a hand in or directly created a number of my all-time favorite pieces of quests, content, and lore. But instead, we got 3 really rushed pieces of storytelling in the Jack of Spades, Our Man in the North, and Fight Club. Ugh. They got minimal gameplay, awful puzzles, and just hasty storytelling that skimmed over details that weren't just needed, but have been crucial to making benefice's story feel interesting. Fight Club is the biggest offender here, after the disappointing Our Man in the North, setting up some major story points with Osman, and instead of doing any more heavy lifting, it just rushes through a joke of a uniting for the 4 benefice faction leaders and speeds into an admittedly alright boss fight with the Pharaoh, and then randomly installs Osman on the throne, murdering the Pharaoh, and then that's it. It's over. The story of Amascut in these quests was a joke. She was almost completely uninvolved with anything that happened, after placing a much more direct hand into the events of the desert in previous quests in this series. And the introduction of the Soul Altar was deeply disconnected. These quests needed months more dev time, and I'm sure everyone would have happily waited for them. It's a shame because I can tell the developers had a number of good ideas, but didn't have the time or the budget to really execute them the way they wanted. The reputation system was another major issue with benefice, moving incredibly slowly with essentially no good rewards of note, making raising your reputation feel unimpactful and disinteresting. My only drive to unlock rewards was to get to the quests, and eventually to unlock a requirement for my completionist gate. The city quests were a pass at a small-scale Radiant quests program, but were awkwardly balanced and didn't feel too great. The reputation rewards sure sped things up a little bit, but they didn't really feel necessary in this way that randomly generated stuff rarely does. And lastly, Shifting Tombs provided a skilling-based version of Shattered Worlds. Kind of fun at first and interesting, but quickly grew stale once you realized that the gameplay never really evolved. Benefice ended up being a real mixed bag of updates, and I rather blame the shoehorned-in Slayer stuff for that, to be perfectly frank. It's a shame that this killed the expansion model, though, as even one expansion per year would really have been welcome. On the plus side, though, Unfinished Business seems to be a strong route to take, and I'm eager to see what comes out of that. At number 4, we have another piece of Benefice-related content, dropped a few weeks after the city's release. And that is the Magister, a supremely disappointing Slayer boss, with some unfortunately dull mechanics, even if they finally did make use of the conversion to the Constitution level from hit points. It had hideously high defense, requiring a use of auras for a while to even be able to get a good hit chance, and beyond poor drops. Requiring a key dropped by the Slayer monsters definitely didn't help this boss, and even while introducing a set of tier 92 melee weapons, the Magister failed to really capture an audience. If there's anything nice to say about the Magister, it's that lore-wise this boss was a huge home run, and its lore books were great. The use of the Oreb character here offered some nice closure to Nomad's storyline that wasn't felt in the same way by Slisky's endgame. So huge props for using Oreb and the idea of a Terra Guardian Magister here as a boss. It's a shame that the boss is on the poor end, though. Some post-release changes have helped somewhat, but the boss value is still really low, and it's just not a very fun encounter overall. Finally, stepping away from Benefice now, our third place slot goes to the Spring Fair. Unlike other crater events like the Well-Loved Beach or the Alright Novemberfest, the Spring Fair managed to place so high on this list due to the downright predatory balancing, awful reward distribution, and for it being the most boring of the events so far. With a super short cap on skilling, terrible access to the tickets to purchase rewards, and a serious emphasis on the microtransactions aspect of the event, it took until almost halfway into it for stuff to finally balance out and feel less like a high-cost cash grab, thanks to the mods finally stepping in and doing some work. Unfortunately, the damage had been done, and the low access cap really didn't help player engagement with this one, I found. Hopefully Jagex has learned a lot from this disaster for the next time the event rolls around, and the Spring Fair takes notes from the Novemberfest style and the beach style for its next go-around. I really do appreciate the mods taking the time to finally get this update into a decent balance state, though. It's clear that the microtransactions element of it overtook what the spirit of the event was supposed to be, and it made offering meaningful rewards really challenging when it was all balanced around trying to get you to pay. I do appreciate them taking the time to get it back into something that felt more fun to play, but it almost felt like too little too late, unfortunately. At number 2 is an update that had every right to be excellent, but managed to stumble and fail in almost every aspect due to serious cuts. Intended to be Jagex's big streaming pull for RuneScape 3, Shattered Worlds instead offered little but stale and repetitive gameplay, a serious lack of competition options, and next to no interesting moments. The gameplay was essentially walk into a pretty graphics world, kill a bunch of functionally identical but different named and graphicked monsters, and then enter a giant portal to the next floor. While the rewards were a bright spot, the terribly balanced anima game mechanics, the awful gameplay, and painfully dull modifiers left them feeling like a lucky hit. The use of the Slayer masks here was appreciated though, as getting items off Treasure Hunter is always nice. However, the other problems here stem from what could have been. The story of Shattered Worlds, or at least the tiny snippet we got, mentions the Abyss warping wildly, a mysterious anima witch being chased through portals, and the Abyssal Knights being formed from a combination of the Temple and Void Knights to try and combat the chaos this witch had wrought. She's still mentioned in-game, but her backstory, that being an ex-Void Knight who tried to siphon the energies of the Abyss, was Kenton, the, hub guy who tells you the lore, wife. And it was supremely interesting, as she was supposed to be the antagonist of the whole mini-game. But cut boss events, cut alternate objectives, cut side events, not to mention the whole competitive race mode that was scrapped, leaves this update feeling beyond half-baked. It leaves it feeling completely unfinished. Even with improvements to the anima rate gain, I think this minigame needs serious work to even be close to living up to its potential. And being forced to cut so much of the content that really made this update stand out in concept phase to me, leaves me feeling really sad. I really hope that someday they get the chance to return to this and really make this update as good as it sounded like it could have been. Just like with the top 10 list, I'm not doing a proper dishonorable mentions list here. Just a few quick shoutouts. Shitouts? We'll stick with shoutouts. The sheer number of microtransaction promos this year was smothering. I'm glad it's being cut back, but this alone made this year hugely problematic. The overwhelming number of skilling to collect events was also a bit peeving this year, but luckily being uncapped was a nice way to keep these in my goodwill. Another problem was just a lack of updates. Like, seriously, it was legitimately hard to make these lists due to an overall lack of stuff. And everything I covered, I think the only ones I didn't touch on was the luck rework, which was fine, the tooltips update, which was great but small, the sky options, which was fun, and like, I don't know, fucking raffle. It was an abysmal year for update density, and that alone is a major negative, and the last shit out I'm going to be offering here. But let's get to the real shit show of an update. Sorry if I sound bitter, but I'm just annoyed by this one. Our number 1 slot goes to the biggest mistake of 2017 in RuneScape, an update so mangled that was supposed to be a huge event for RS3 that instead turned into a laughable mess that was never balanced well despite several passes, and left the community kind of infuriated at the end. And that update is, of course, Dimension of the Damned. My god, what a terrible, misguided update. I can't think of a single positive for this one. Teased initially with some moody images that made many assume it was a Halloween update and be set in the Dimension of Disaster again like the year before, many Quest fans on Twitter got kind of excited. And then we got the reveal that it was actually a PvP-free version of Deadman from 07scape, with zombies, awkward loot crates, lots of dev time spent on graphics and mechanics and nothing else, and a big reward at the end, with a trip to Jagex, and a statue, and an in-game pet and stuff. And I got really, really worried. And then, once the game mode launched, I knew we were in for something incredibly special. The balance was, pardon my French, fucking terrible. The design on how to get items was fucking terrible. The balance for player spam was fucking terrible. Same with the rewards, and like, everything else. There was no challenge. There was no fun. There was no interesting gameplay. It really was just roll mystery boxes to get ranged gear and chase zombies. Melee was wildly ineffective following the balance pass that made being in melee range just deadly and completely undoable. This made grinding even worse, as you had to gather an absurd amount of ammo to even be competitive. It was just boring. There was no leveling, there was no questing, there was no real gameplay. It was just slaughter a fuck ton of zombies. There wasn't even an option to use mage here, not that I would have wanted to with the amount of rune gathering I would have had to do. I cannot fathom who pitched this event, and I'm shocked that the rest of the team was okay with it in the way that it came together. This update utterly fell apart, and I can't think of a single person who enjoyed it. Let me take some quotes from Reddit on this one. The first 30 minutes were thrilling. Why? Because we didn't know what we were in for. Then we learned, and we were disappointed. Old school RuneScape player here, and I thought the last Deadman mode finale was a disaster. I don't even blame the people that worked on this update. Whether they were assigned to work on the update or they volunteered to, the real issue here is that somebody even allowed them to. It's so ridiculously inefficient and bad for the game to have people working in areas they aren't knowledgeable in, no matter how much fun it may be for the employee. More like Dimension of the God-fucking Damned. And one of my favorites that sums up really the top 2 updates overall. What was the point of this event? The focus of the event itself seems to just be a vehicle to have a contest streamed on Twitch. Why is Jagex leaning so heavily on Twitch and pushing itself so hard with stream-exclusive pets and content? It's bullshit. I don't care about Twitch. I want a self-contained game where I don't have to have a million social media accounts, a fucking Amazon account, membership to obscure gaming magazines, and video game streaming service like what the fuck? Can I just play the game and have the content and relevant information available to me? Have the game itself be the main focus and not just a platform to advertise some other unrelated service? And can I have time to actually enjoy the content? Like, what the fuck is this post-modern bullshit the game is becoming? I don't necessarily agree with everything said there, but it does cover a lot of what I really disliked about Shattered Worlds and Dimension of the Damned. Instead of focusing on making quality content that players want to approach and play, we got botched, rushed updates that focus more on being streaming marketable rather than, well, good content. And don't get me started on the balancing of this event. It changed several times across the week or so of playable time, ranging from stupidly easy to stupidly hard. And scores were not adjusted or refreshed, meaning anyone who did well early, when it was easy, had an absurd advantage getting into the scoring. It was incredibly dumb and just really terribly handled. And even with changes, with the mods actually working very hard to try and get this balanced, it never got to be fun. I was especially disappointed in the way feedback was handled. Instead of properly addressing problems, I saw a lot more excuses, and that really disappointed me. And they tried on the balance, they did, but it was not done well and it wasn't done right. And lastly, this event's finale was a shit show. It was pushed back several times, and then due to some timing issues, the actual start time was pushed back, which caused the murder-death fog of doom to just show up early and kill most of the players. So our winners were the ones who just got lucky enough to survive. Wow. Great. And there was no rescheduling or anything. The results just stood. They apologized, and I understand how the errors happened, but it seems so crazy to me that it happened in the first place. Not knowing that the fog would just be spawned in a world when you delayed the whole thing by a certain amount of time seems kind of ridiculous to me, and I'm really shocked that that slipped through testing at all. It was a terrible end to one of the worst pieces of content I have ever had the misfortune to play. Please never bring this back. Even with proper balance, a game mode where all you do is kill mechanicless zombies with tier 50 or below items is nobody's idea of fun. Sorry. And that's all I've got for you today. In a troubled year with a dearth of updates, these were the 10 that we think were really the worst of the year. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this list, if you agree or not. And, yeah, thanks for taking the time to check this list out. I know this is one of the more negative recordings that we do on this channel, but whew, I needed to get that out. I really, really hope Jagex has learned from these failures, and that next year will be much stronger. I think we'll be off to a good start, but, you know, I can really only hope right now. Keep it tuned on this channel for our thoughts on everything that comes out, and, hopefully Jagex does as well. I've been Amascut from the Society of Owls, and thank you so much for watching. On your screen now as well, you can see each individual member's top 10 list as well, if you were wondering what our personal thoughts were.